Imagine a time before the pyramids rose on the banks of the Nile, before the kings of Mesopotamia carved their names into clay, before the legends of Greece or Rome had ever been whispered. In the fertile land stretching along the Indus River and its many tributaries, a great civilization emerged, built not on the glory of kings or the clang of endless wars, but on balance, order, and an astonishing sense of community. This was the Indus Valley Civilization, one of humanity's earliest and most mysterious urban worlds. A culture that thrived for nearly 2,000 years and then seemed to vanish, leaving behind silent streets, intricate brick houses, and unanswered questions. Tonight, let us wander together into the forgotten cities of South Asia and uncover the secrets of the Indus. To begin our journey, we must first imagine the land itself. The Indus River winds its way through modern-day Pakistan and northwest India, fed by the melting snows of the Himalayas. Thousands of years ago, this mighty river carved out plains of astonishing fertility, where people first turned from hunting and gathering toward farming. Alongside wheat and barley fields grew sesame and cotton, plants that would travel far beyond this region to transform the lives of countless others. Herds of cattle grazed along the riverbanks, and fishing boats plied the waters. It was a landscape alive with possibility, but also one that demanded cooperation. The river's seasonal floods could bring both destruction and renewal, requiring early farmers to work together to manage water, build canals, and store grain. It was here, amid this delicate balance of nature and human ingenuity, that one of the world's first great urban cultures began to take shape. Archaeologists today speak of the Indus Valley Civilization as one of the cradles of civilization, standing alongside Mesopotamia and Egypt. Yet for centuries, its existence was unknown. Beneath fields and villages lay cities waiting to be discovered. It was not until the 1920s that excavations at Harappa and Mohenjo-Daro revealed astonishing remains. Streets laid out in perfect grids, brick houses equipped with their own wells and drains, and public baths that seemed to hint at rituals of purity and community. The discovery shocked the world, for here was evidence that long before the Greeks or the Romans, long before even the earliest Chinese dynasties, South Asia had fostered a civilization of remarkable sophistication. But unlike Egypt, where hieroglyphs told stories of kings and gods, or Mesopotamia, where cuneiform tablets recorded trade and law, the Indus left behind no deciphered writing. The script carved onto seals and pottery still resists translation today, keeping the voice of this people locked in silence. It is a silence that makes their achievements all the more haunting. For we can see the cities, touch their bricks, walk their streets in imagination, but we cannot yet hear their words. As we explore the Indus Valley Civilization, let us move slowly, like a traveler entering a new and ancient city at dusk. We will wander first through its origins, when small villages grew into larger towns and the steady rhythm of farming became the heartbeat of something larger. We will pause at the great cities of Harappa and Mohenjo-Daro, marveling at their planned streets and ingenious systems. We will look at the artifacts, seals, beads, figurines, and consider the daily lives of the people who shaped them. We will enter into their spiritual world, glimpsing how they may have worshipped nature, fertility, and the great rivers that sustain them. Finally, we will watch as this civilization declined, not in flames or conquest, but in a quieter, more enigmatic fading, leaving future generations to wonder why. Through this journey, perhaps, we will come closer to understanding the legacy of the Indus, a civilization without emperors or grandiose monuments, but with a quiet genius that still speaks to us across time. Now, let us step back to the very beginnings. Imagine a cluster of small farming villages thousands of years ago, scattered across the plains. Families lived in mud brick houses, tending goats and cattle, growing wheat and barley in fields fed by the river's waters. These people belonged to what scholars call the Neolithic culture of Mehrgar, one of the earliest farming communities in South Asia, dating as far back as 7,000 BCE. At Mehrgar, archaeologists have found evidence of early dentistry, tiny drilled teeth from human remains. By 3000 BCE, the scattered settlements had coalesced into towns. Mud brick gave way to baked brick, fired in kilns to last for centuries. Streets were no longer a random maze, but laid out in straight lines, as if following some unseen plan. This shift from village to city was not sudden, nor was it driven by a single ruler's ambition. Instead, it was the product of many communities working together, guided perhaps by shared customs and practical needs. Water management was key. Irrigation canals and reservoirs allowed farming to flourish, ensuring surpluses of grain that could feed growing populations. Trade expanded too, linking the Indus region to Mesopotamia and beyond. Seals from the Indus, carved with strange symbols and animal motifs, have been found as far away as Sumer, suggesting a network of exchange that tied distant worlds together. And then came the flowering of the great cities, Harappa in the north, Mohenjo-Daro in the south, and dozens more across the plains. These were not small towns, but true urban centers, each home to tens of thousands of people. Their streets were laid in perfect grids, with main avenues running north-south and east-west, intersecting at right angles like a checkerboard. Houses were built from uniform bricks, often 2 or 3 stories high, with flat roofs that caught the breeze. Wells stood in courtyards, giving families clean water. Perhaps most astonishing were the drains, covered channels that carried wastewater away from homes into larger sewers. No other civilization of the time matched such attention to hygiene and public order. Imagine walking through Mohenjo-Daro at dawn, the sun rising over the baked clay streets, the smell of bread baking in ovens, children fetching water from a well, merchants opening their shops along a marketplace. This was a city alive, ordered, and astonishingly modern in its sensibilities. What strikes many scholars is not only the scale of these cities, but also their character. In Egypt, towering pyramids proclaim the power of pharaohs. In Mesopotamia, ziggurats rise toward the sky as symbols of kings and gods. But in the Indus, there are no obvious palaces, no grand monuments to single rulers. Instead, the architecture suggests a society that valued order and community above ostentatious display. The largest structure at Mohenjo-Daro is not a temple or palace, but the Great Bath, a vast sunken pool of brick, carefully waterproofed, with steps leading down on all sides. Was it used for rituals of purification or for gatherings of the community? We cannot say for certain, but its prominence suggests a culture where shared ritual mattered more than royal vanity. This is one of the mysteries that makes the Indus Valley so fascinating. A civilization advanced and organized, yet strangely humble in its visible symbols of power. As evening falls over the imagined city, let us pause here. we have entered the world of the Indus, seen its foundations, and glimpsed the marvels of its urban life. Ahead lies a deeper exploration, the daily lives of its people, their crafts, their trade, and the spiritual beliefs that shape their days. For now, take with you the image of a city planned with care, where clean water flowed through wells and drains, where merchants traded across oceans, and where the great bath stood as a symbol of something greater than any one person. In the next part of our journey, we will walk further into these streets, meet the artisans, farmers, and priests, and seek to understand the rhythms of life in these forgotten cities of South Asia. Imagine again that morning in Mohenjo-Daro. The city stirs to life as the sun warms the baked brick streets. Merchants begin setting out their wares, gleaming beads of carnelian and lapis lazuli, small terracotta figurines, copper tools, and finely painted pottery. Farmers from nearby villages arrive at the marketplace with baskets of grain, fruit, and vegetables. The air hums with quiet activity, not the roar of a marketplace dominated by loud bargaining, but the measured rhythm of a people who seem to have valued order and harmony. Daily life in the Indus Valley was built around this balance. Families lived in brick houses arranged along orderly lanes, with flat rooftops where they might sit in the evening breeze or dry grains in the sun. Most homes had small courtyards where cooking was done, often with ovens built of clay. Wells dotted the neighborhoods, and the careful drainage system ensured that wastewater was carried away, keeping the streets remarkably clean compared to other ancient cities. It is this sense of quiet dignity that fascinates us today. For these were not chaotic or haphazard settlements, but places where the practical needs of life were met with astonishing foresight. The people themselves were skilled artisans. Beads carved from semi-precious stones have been found in abundance, drilled so precisely that modern jewelers still marvel at the craftsmanship. Small seals, often made of steatite, bear delicate carvings of animals, unicorn-like creatures, humped bulls, elephants, and tigers. Each seal is inscribed with a line of mysterious symbols, the Indus script still undeciphered. Were these seals used as signatures for merchants, pressed into clay to mark ownership or origin? Or did they hold deeper meaning, perhaps tied to religion or ritual? We do not know, but their widespread presence suggests that they were an important part of Indus identity. Trade was the lifeblood of these cities. The Indus people were not isolated. They reached outward, connecting their world to distant lands. Cotton textiles, likely dyed in vibrant colors, may have been shipped to Mesopotamia, where Indus goods appear in records of trade. In return, they imported silver, tin, and luxury items. Overland caravans may have carried goods across mountain passes, while boats traveled the rivers and coastlines, linking the Indus with the Persian Gulf. Imagine an Indus merchant arriving in a Sumerian port, his cargo of beads and textiles sparking curiosity among foreign traders. In such exchanges, not only goods but ideas flowed, enriching both worlds. And yet, for all their material sophistication, the Indus people remain mysterious in their beliefs. Without deciphered texts, we cannot hear their hymns or prayers. What we do have are the artifacts, small terracotta figurines of women, often interpreted as fertility goddesses, seals depicting animals and perhaps deities, and the famous proto-Shifa seal, which some scholars believe shows a horned figure seated in a yogic posture surrounded by animals. Could this be an early form of a deity later known in Hinduism? The continuity is debated, but it reminds us that spiritual traditions have deep roots in this region. Rituals of water also seem to have played a role. The Great Bath of Mohenjo-Daro, carefully built with waterproof bricks and a system for filling and draining water, suggests collective ceremonies. Was this a place where people came to purify themselves before worship, or where leaders gathered for communal rites? The centrality of water in Indus culture, for farming, for hygiene, for ritual, ties it closely to the rhythms of the river itself. The Indus was not merely a source of sustenance, it was the lifeblood of a civilization and perhaps the focus of its spirituality. Even the absence of certain features is striking. There are no grand palaces, no vast temples, no monumental statues of kings. Instead, the cities suggest a more egalitarian structure, or at least one where power was shared rather than concentrated in a single ruler. This stands in stark contrast to Egypt or Mesopotamia, where the authority of kings dominated both daily life and religious belief. In the Indus, governance may have been more collective, rooted in councils or assemblies that managed trade, water systems, and community order. If so, it speaks of a society remarkable not only for its urban planning, but also for its social cohesion. Picture now the evening in Mohenjo-Daro. The sun sets, casting long shadows across the streets. Families gather on rooftops, cooking fires glow, and somewhere in the city, the soft sound of drums or flutes drifts into the air. Perhaps a ritual is taking place at the Great Bath, torches flickering against the brick walls as people descend into the water. The night is calm, the city at peace, unaware that centuries later it would lie in ruins, puzzling archaeologists and historians. For now, it is alive, filled with a quiet beauty, a balance between work, trade, ritual, and rest. But no civilization endures unchanged. In the centuries after 2000 BCE, the world of the Indus began to shift. Rivers altered their courses, perhaps devastating farmlands. Climate patterns may have changed, bringing drought to the plains. Trade routes faltered, and the great cities began to wane. The once bustling streets of Mohenjo-Daro grew quieter. Houses were abandoned, and the careful order unraveled. By around 1500 BCE, the Indus Valley civilization had faded, leaving behind its enigmatic ruins. And yet, its spirit was not lost, for echoes of its culture may have flowed into later traditions of South Asia, carrying forward the memory of a people who valued harmony and order above all. When we speak of the fall of civilizations, we often imagine catastrophic endings, invasions, wars, or plagues that sweep away entire peoples. But the decline of the Indus Valley appears different. It was not marked by fire or conquest, but by a slower, quieter unraveling. The rivers that had once nourished its cities may have shifted course, leaving farmlands dry and canals useless. Prolonged droughts, as suggested by recent climate studies, could have placed unbearable strain on food supplies. Without surplus grain, the great cities could no longer support their populations. Gradually, people left, dispersing into smaller villages, carrying fragments of their traditions with them. Some theories once proposed an invasion by Indo-Aryan peoples, but modern scholarship suggests a more complex picture. It seems more likely that environmental stress combined with internal shifts led to the weakening of urban centers. What is remarkable is how the Indus people adapted. Instead of vanishing entirely, they transformed, blending into new cultural landscapes that would later form the roots of early Vedic society in South Asia. In this way, the end of the Indus was not an ending, but a transformation, the quiet merging of one world into another. For centuries afterward, the memory of these cities was lost. The great mounds of Harappa and Mohenjo-Daro lay buried beneath earth and grass, mistaken for natural hills. Local villagers sometimes carried away bricks for their own homes, not realizing they were dismantling the walls of a vanished civilization. It was only in the 19th and early 20th centuries, during British colonial rule, that archaeologists began to uncover the truth. What they found astonished them. Cities older than imagined, rivaling the glories of Egypt and Mesopotamia. The discovery rewrote the history of South Asia, revealing that its roots reached back thousands of years further than once believed. Even today, the Indus Valley civilization remains one of history's greatest enigmas. We can see its cities, its artifacts, its careful planning, but we cannot hear its voice. The script carved into seals and pottery remains undeciphered, a code waiting to be unlocked. Perhaps one day, with new discoveries, we will finally read the words of the Indus people, and their silence will break after 4,000 years. Until then, we must listen in other ways, through the bricks of their houses, the drains that carried water, the beads that still shine with craftsmanship. What then is the legacy of the Indus Valley? It lies partly in its example of community, a society that built cities without kings, without ostentatious monuments, but with an enduring sense of balance that lies in its innovations. Urban planning, sanitation, trade networks that stretched across continents. And it lies in the echoes of its culture that ripple through time, influencing later traditions of the Indian subcontinent. Perhaps the very concepts of ritual purity, the reverence for rivers, the practice of meditation and balance, all may trace faint lines back to this ancient world. As we close our journey tonight, picture again the streets of Mohenjo-Daro at twilight. The sun dips below the horizon, casting the city in gold and shadow. Families gather on rooftops. The great bath lies still, and merchants close their shops. The city is alive in memory, though its people are long gone. And as we drift back into the present, we carry with us the story of a civilization that has not vanished, but continues to whisper through the ruins. The Indus Valley civilization, forgotten for centuries, yet never truly lost.